Hello and welcome to the Shinybees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Milmine and this is episode 92, Midwinter Yarns, an interview with Estelle Faust.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright. I need a drink, I need a friend.
Hello and welcome to the show. A warm welcome to any new listeners that are joining us today. I am Jo, I am your host, and I hope you'll enjoy spending a little time here with myself and Estelle. And if you're a returning listener, thank you as always for coming back again to spend your time with me and the other Shiny crew. And you'll also enjoy this latest in our set of interviews. I was delighted when Estelle agreed to come on to the show. I have been a long-time admirer of Midwinter Yarns, and Estelle and her husband Mark are absolutely lovely. They're great fun. They're always the people that I go to at shows and sort of seek out to go and say hello to because they're just dead friendly and nice. And I always appreciate going and having a look at all the lovely colours of yarn and having a bit of a banter with both of them and looking at the new things that they've brought in. And they always have something a little bit different. And that's why I really enjoy their stalls in particular. So I was thrilled that she agreed to come onto the show and that she agreed to re-record her interview when hers was unfortunately one of the ones that I lost a few weeks ago due to a software issue that was quite a widespread software issue. And unfortunately I lost the first version, but she very kindly agreed to come on again, and I know how precious her time is, so I'm very grateful for that. If you are a fan of Scandinavian type yarns, if you like something a little bit more robust, a little bit more kind of traditional, but with definite hints of modern sort of styles, and you like to learn all about of the rich kind of textile tradition coming out of Scandinavia, then Midwinter Yarns is definitely going to be, if you've not heard about it already, the sort of place that's going to make you really, really happy. I really enjoyed this interview talking to Estelle, hearing about how she went from working as an interior designer in Cardiff and decided to step out on her own and set up her own business, and how she brings so much of her kind of heritage and childhood and culture from Sweden and makes it available for all of us over in the UK. You can find everything about Estelle at midwinteryarns.co.uk. If you can't possibly wait till the end of the interview and you want to get straight in there now, that is the place to go. But I am looking forward to welcoming her onto the show. So grab a drink of some description and some Tunnock's tea cakes because they are flavour of the month. Get your knitting and we will crack on with the show. So I'm delighted today to welcome Estelle onto the show of Midwinter Yarns. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a sunny day in Wales.
Is it? It is pouring down in the north. That fine rain that gets you wet through.
Oh, right, okay. No, we've actually got a stunning sunny morning today.
Oh, lovely. Well, hopefully that'll find its way up here by the afternoon then.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. So for those who are maybe not that familiar with you, Estelle, can you tell us a bit about you as a person and how you came to be interested in yarning pursuits?
I grew up in Sweden, and I have, through various stops in Europe, found my way to Wales. In Sweden, when you go to school, especially in primary school and middle school, you spend half the year doing textile things and half the year doing woodwork. I mean, amongst other things, obviously. So everybody gets a grounding in sewing and knitting and weaving if you're particularly good. And at the same time, my mother is a big knitter and a sewer. So she taught me already before then, when I was about 5 or 6, and it was a chore and I hated it. But the thing is, we also travelled a lot, and because she was such a big knitter, she would always, find the yarn shop in the town. You know what it's like when you sort of plan your travels according to whether there are yarn shops in the place or not. So as I was sort of tagging along, eventually you sort of pick up a ball and go, I could do a thing with this, and I could do a thing with this, and I could do a thing with this, and eventually you're a knitter. So yeah, that's sort of how it all started, really.
I love it. I love how your mum used to just plan her shopping, her travels around her shopping, and because we definitely don't do that, do we?
No,
Ever.
no, not at all. At all. I don't go wandering in obscure parts of town just because there might be a yarn shop there
No,
at all.
definitely, definitely. So what was the tipping point then that became sort of your hobby and something that you kind of grew into as you got older and got more interested in it? What turned that into a business?
Um, I think there was a number of things that came together because at one point, we were living in London by then, and this is about 10 years ago now. Um, the sort of whole indie dyer thing started, and I thought, I could have a little go at that, and I wanted to turn it into a business. But it was this vicious circle of sort of, because I was working, I didn't have the time to dye enough to turn it into a viable business because I didn't have the stock and the kind of updates and things like that. And then at the same time, I started realizing that at the time, it has changed a bit now. At the time, there were really only two suppliers that supplied undyed yarns to dyers, which meant that most of the dyers seemed to be using the same basis. So even though the colors were very different and everybody's style is very different, it was essentially the same yarn. So I started sniffing around trying to see if I could find a different base, which eventually led me back to Sweden and looking at what's available there. And then I realized that, Sweden, with its big knitting tradition and all that, just they have loads of yarn and nobody knows about it outside of the country. So it sort of turned into realizing that other people do dyeing better than I do, and just realizing that there was lots of yarns to, finished yarns to share. And I thought I could actually, I wanted to sort of concentrate on sourcing that and spreading that sort of, love of wool and natural materials that we have in Sweden. I wanted to spread that. So there was that, and there was also the fact that we then eventually moved from London to Wales, which meant we had more space, and it was a purely practical thing of realizing, well, actually, I have got space to keep stock, and I've got space to actually run a business, and it sort of ran from there.
Super.
Mm.
So obviously you've talked about moving around a lot and you moved from London to Wales. And I'd
Mm.
imagine your life looks quite different now than it did in London. What is a typical day like for you?
Typical day now is getting up, picking orders, making sure that everything's ready to go to the post office, taking a stroll to the post office because we live in a lovely valley and it's and it's strolling down to the post office, which is nice. There's I do also, when people think, oh, you're a retailer, you don't really get involved, you just kind of open boxes and ship it on. It's not, because a lot of the suppliers that I work with, they're smaller companies. Some of the yarns, for example, the Lithuanian linen is actually spun for us. So it comes into me on big cones and it needs to be separated out into hanks and wound into hanks and labeled and all that. So I do actually get involved with the yarns themselves, and there is a little bit of production going on essentially, and sort of labeling and packaging, and then doing things like we've got the little mini hanks now, and so I do try and be hands-on with the yarns. Then there's a lot of knitting involved because partly sort of knitting, we try to work with designers to sort of, because our yarns tend not to have an awful lot of pattern support behind them. So we do talk to a lot of designers. We do try and work out designs to show off, what you can do with the yarns. Whenever a new design comes out, I do try and, even though the designs will lend us their samples, I do try and kind of make our own for the shows, for display. Plus, it's just things like keeping up with Instagram, and it's just constantly sort of just showing people what you can make. And then there's just, whenever I get the yarn in my hands, I just have loads of ideas of, I want to do one of these, and then drop everything else and kind of start working on that. So there's lots and lots of knitting involved. And I mean, the thing is, our days are a little bit back to front because Mark, who some people might have met already, MrMidwinter. He works in a pub.
Mm-hmm.
He works in 2 pubs, in fact. And so he works in the evening. So very often we have the kind of luxury of being able to do stuff in the day when everybody else is in their normal work and there's not that many people out, and just things like the supermarket and boring things as well. But we tend to kind of do things in the day, and then I'll do most of my work in the evening when he's at work as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's kind of one of the benefits, I guess, of running your own business, is that you can work whenever you like.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge benefit. It can be an inconvenient because you do find yourself sort of sitting at 2 o'clock in the morning going, I'm just going to finish this border and cast it off. But on the whole, yeah, no, it's lovely. It means you can go to the gym when it's not packed, and it's, just things like that. It's quite nice.
Oh, super.
Mm.
So you've talked a little bit about wanting to bring some Swedish yarns and share them with everyone here, and working with lots of small dyers or producers, and working with different designers to kind of bring all of that sort of together. So can you tell us about your creative process when you do that? How do you go about, pairing up yarns with designers, and how do you go about deciding which ones to share with us all?
I think sourcing the yarns, I think it's still the magic of internet. A lot of it. It's I follow a whole bunch of Swedish people on Instagram, and always looking at what they're doing. And if they mention a yarn that I don't know about, then I'll be straight on them, going, oh, what is this, and how do I get in touch with them, and then finding out obviously the backstory of the yarn producers, and we sort of. There's a couple of different criteria for our yarns. The biggest one is usually whether the actual raw materials are as local as possible. So, for example, Ulcentrum is one of our kind of biggest sellers, and we do a lot of work with them. Their whole ethos is that they don't want to see. It's very much the same situation as in Wales, actually. That wool is very much seen as an inconvenience for the farmers. And it's a nuisance. And here in Wales, we've got the British Wool Board who will pick up the wool and pay them an absolute pittance for it. In Sweden, the wool gets burnt. It just gets incinerated once it's been sheared off. So Ulcentrum actually travel around. They're based on Öland, which is a little island off the east coast.
Yeah.
They will travel around the farms there, and they will travel around the sort of farms on the kind of nearby mainland and collect their wool. So they're a very sort of local sort of product. If we're working with a raw material that isn't necessarily kind of completely local, then it's got things to do like with Swedish knitting traditions. So, for example, we have our rag sock yarn, which is the only yarn we do that has a nylon content in it, but it's a particular thick sock yarn, which is the kind of socks that everybody had and slid around on wooden floors in, and still do. So it's something that for me harks back to something very Swedish and something from my childhood. So it's like, well, no, we have to have the rag sock wool because it's so typically, and if you say rag sock to anybody from Sweden, and mostly from Norway and Denmark as well, they'll know exactly what you mean. So it's things like that, and then obviously just colours, whether the colours will fit within our range, because we tend to go for a lot of because a lot of people think, oh, Sweden is all very minimal and very kind of neutral and things like that. And it's not actually. We pair all this neutralness with some quite rich colours. So it tends to be rich rather than bright, but there is colour there. Also, a lot of our yarns, the colour ones, what I think makes the difference and gives them that particular quality is that most of them are actually dyed onto a grey base rather than a white.
Yeah.
And that changes the sort of intensity of the colour straight away. So yeah, so it's just looking at, different producers, and obviously trying to promote people who are not already represented abroad, and just sort of forming working relationships with them. And then obviously the work with the designers that just comes from making contact and people getting excited about it. We did the Karina Westerman did the Hugger collection with us, because obviously, as she's Scandinavian as well, when we got in touch with each other, it was sort of like, oh, let's do something very Scandinavian, something very. There's this concept of hygge, which in Swedish is called mysigt, but it's the same sort of word which describes essentially cozy, but it can be a bit more than that. It's one of those words that tends to turn up in untranslatable words list. Is usually hygge. It's just that sort of sense of curling up with a cup of tea and a knitting and a cat, and just sort of really it's a big thing essentially. So she wanted to do a collection based on that, and then used our yarns for it. So it's usually, as for which yarns go with which project, that tends to be up to the designer more than to us. So they will say, well, what I'd like to know. I mean, Karina, for example, did ask us, if I wanted to do something like this, which yarn would you recommend? So obviously that comes to our kind of knowledge of our product. But then it's up to them to choose the colours and what they actually want to do.
Oh, brilliant. I love the way that you're not dogmatically, it must be Swedish and it must be this. It's more about having that whole picture and telling the stories. And like you said at the beginning, you wanted to spread it and share those traditions. And you're definitely doing that by giving yourself a little bit of flexibility and saying, well, no, we must have the rag sock because that is just so Swedish and everybody remembers that.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way of looking at things, because I've never been to Sweden, but I really like those cinnamon pastries, like a cinnamon swirl.
Cinnamon buns.
Yes, my
Yes.
Swedish friend used to make those for me, and that's something that I imagine everyone is sat around wearing these beautiful kind of knitted socks and eating the cinnamon buns. It's like sharing the culture.
Pretty much. Actually, the cinnamon buns were Mark's groom's cake last year, because we had a oh god. Our actual wedding cake was a Swedish princess cake, which isn't as floofy as it sounds. It's a bright green thing. But then the groom's cake, I made cinnamon buns because he loves them. So, yeah.
Oh, they are delicious. I love it. I love the way we can kind of travel to Sweden and experience all the culture and things through Midwinter. It's ace.
Thank you.
So speaking of journeys, hypothetical or otherwise, none of them are ever smooth ones, and running a business has its ups and downs. Can you think of a time when things maybe didn't quite go to plan, or what happened, and what did you learn as a result of it?
We're still relatively new. We're just coming into our third year, so I don't think I've discovered any major disasters. It's been more things like timings and getting to shows on time, because we did make that mistake with one show that we decided to come and set up in the morning and completely underestimated how long it would take us, and it got a bit stressful. But so far we've not had any major disasters, I don't think. I think I'm learning every day this whole sort of working smarter thing. And there's a few little changes that we're doing now to our display, which allows us to kind of like for Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which has just been, I had some special boxes made, and we're very excited about the special boxes. The special boxes means that we can pack the yarn in a display sort of way at home, so when we get there, all we do is slot the box into the shelf, which is actually an idea I've stolen from Eden Cottage Yarns, but that's a different story.
Jesus. I'm biased.
Yeah, but it's a good idea. So
yeah.
So things like that, we're sort of now getting to a stage where we're sort of tweaking a little bit how we work and things like that, just to kind of make it run a little bit smoother and not find yourself at 2:00 in the morning winding 10 kilos of linen into hanks and things like that. So it's just got to do with getting better organized, and yeah, I'm a terrible procrastinator usually, so I think it's more kind of my discipline of doing things a little bit in advance.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there with it might not be major disaster, bad thing, there might not be some kind of really dramatic story to tell, but looking at the way you're doing things and try and work smarter rather than just working harder or doing things because that's the way you're supposed to do them or that's what everyone's always done.
Exactly.
It's really important, especially as your business grows.
Yeah, definitely.
Lovely. So taking it from all of your learning so far, what
Mhm.
has been the highest point of your journey so far?
Um, I think the highest point is always seeing the finished project,
Mm.
because it's still that sort of feeling of, it's for me, it's also, I just love seeing what, I mean, we sell yarn to people, and then I love seeing what it becomes after. I love seeing that somebody has actually finished a project and has enjoyed it and is actually wearing it, and it's a thing, and it's, it continues to kind of live and have a shape after it's kind of left our shop, our stall. So it's just, yeah, seeing people in finished projects is always lovely, especially at shows when they come up. And then the other thing that really got me is, again, because the shows are our chance to get, actually meet people and meet customers, um, is when people come to a show and they'll come to us straight away in the morning and go, "You're on my list of stalls to see." And that's quite, we're not just a sort of random company that people kind of walk past. It's, and happen to look at. They actually kind of looked it up and went, right, these people, I need to go and see them, or I've, bought from them before and need to go and see them again. That sort of thing. That feels absolutely amazing when people do that. I think as a single event, it's going to have to be the Edinburgh Yarn Show. just being part of that, and I still wonder how we've ended up kind of being part of it, because it's got such a kind of vibe of, as a sort of top end vendors, is also all the kind of designers and teachers that are walking around, and it's just, there's so many contacts that you can make, them people you talk to. And then the other thing is also just the visitors, because the quality of the knitwear in Scotland is incredible. And you just spend the whole weekend kind of looking at what people are wearing and going, I want to make one of them, I want to make one of them, I want to make one of them. So it's a dangerous show, but it's just amazing to be part of that. We're very, very grateful that we get to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I can attest to the quality of knitwear in Scotland. I mean, again, I'm a little bit biased. I am a little bit biased. But it is a great show, and like you said, there's just so many of the big names and teachers in the same place, and
Yeah.
so many really enthusiastic knitters. It's just really great fun.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so international now as well. People are coming from so far
Yeah,
for it. It's quite incredible. But yeah, it's the thing, the big difference I've noticed between shows in the south, and, or rather, customers in the south and customers in the north, is the color work. You do a lot more color work up in Scotland, and it's something that I, for a very long time, didn't really bother with, because I'm more of an endurance knitter. I'll do big expanses of stocking stitch, but then I sort of shirk away from detailed things because I'm not a very good detail person. But it inspired me to do color work, and I think it was also partly, seeing all the color work last year made me want to do the scattered showers shawl that we had this year,
Mhm.
with the sort of little suns and clouds on them. And it's just, yes, because when you do a color work fabric in a proper woolly wool, it's just such a lovely thing. It's like a blanket. Even if it's a cardigan, it feels like a big warm woolly blanket. So it's really inspiring. It's an inspiring place to be.
Fantastic.
Mm.
So taking it back to the wool,
Yes.
which one thing that you know now did you wish you would know when you picked up that first ball of yarn?
Um, I think, I mean, it almost makes you sound like, it should be something negative, and it's not at all. It's I think what's amazing is the sort of community there is around knitting. And I think, when I was 5 and my mother was torturing me to finish my row, I don't think I could have imagined that, um, quite how many friends I would have made
Mm.
knitting. And it's like that feeling, like, for example, next week I'm going up to Gothenburg, where I haven't been before, even though I'm from Sweden. Um, and I'm meeting up for a knit night with some people that I've met online. And it's just kind of almost having like a friend in every port, because you've got that in common and you can talk. And also just knitters, I found, um, other um, other business people in the industry, and everyone around is incredibly generous as well, I've
Mm.
found. And it's just, the kind of community of helping each other along and giving each other ideas. Like I said, I stole an idea from, for display from Eden Cottage Yarns, but I know that she was more than happy to share that idea. It's not like, oh, you're copying what we're doing. It's just, it's just a fantastic community, and I think it's incredible the kind of people you meet through it. So I think, I don't think I could have imagined that it would be such a big part of my life, and obviously a business now as well. And so I think that's. I mean, I think there's the two things that have come together is just kind of knitting itself as an activity, which is can be quite social. It can. I mean, on the other hand, knitting can be a lovely time to isolate yourself, but it can also be a very social event because you go to a knit night and things like that.
No, it's true. It's strange, isn't it? Because like when I left the military, I never thought, you know what, when I leave service, I'm going to become a knitting podcaster and have two knitting related businesses, and all my friends will be knitters.
Yeah.
It's just like the last thing I thought I'd be doing when I grew up was this.
Yeah.
But it's just gives you so much, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. It really does.
Oh, brilliant. Cool. So, desert island skeins, then we're going to have to get specific now.
Okay.
If you were going to be marooned on a desert island and you could only take one ball or skein of yarn, what would you take and why?
I think, and I know it's going to sound really biased, but I think it'd probably be one of our all centrum gradients in the sport weight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's loads of other yarns I like, so it's not that I only like my own yarns, because I like a bit of Madeline Tosh. I like a bit of La Bien-Aimée.
Mm-hmm.
I like a bit of Triskelion. I like nice, soft things. But if I had to knit with the same ball of yarn over and over again, I'd go for a gradient. And in the all centrums, because they're really hard wearing, so I could actually unpick it over and over again for quite a while. And because they're gradient, you can do so many things with it, and they're kind of exciting. Even if you're just knitting a plain thing, it's an exciting thing to just watch the colors change.
Yeah.
And then you can do, not that I've tried them yet, but I have seen really cool projects in like entrelac and things like that, which just really plays on the whole gradient thing. So I think there'd be a few techniques to try there. So yeah, if I had to be stuck with the same one over and over again, that's what I would go for.
Yeah, sounds good. I like it. You've got that good balance between practicality and creativity, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. So what is your favourite then, or your go-to resource, either for yarn craft or for business that you couldn't do without?
I think it'd have to be Ravelry.
Mm.
Because Ravelry is just, I mean, it's really boring, and I know loads of your interviewees have already said that, but it's as a resource for patterns, for yarns, for meeting people, for everything. I think Ravelry is just completely on its own there. Although I must admit I'm a big fan of Instagram as well. I'm a big fan of Instagram because it's so it's so easy. And I think it's that thing of a picture says 1,000 words, because I'm not on Twitter because I don't know what to do with my 140 characters. Mainly because I tend to ramble, so it's not helpful. Whereas a picture, you can just go, look, here's a lovely little, I do a lot of the random color combinations. I don't know if you've ever seen them, where we might just be kind of labeling or packing or unpacking or doing something, and there's a little pile of yarn, and it's just randomly been piled on top of each other, but that's actually a really nice color combination that I would never have thought of putting together. And I do a lot of those little snaps because I just think they're inspiring, and then it's also inspiring to look at other people's pictures and random things they do, and breakfasts, stuff like that.
There's a lot of food on there, isn't there?
There is a lot of food on Instagram, yes. I think Mark got very upset with me once. We were in Wagamama's and I was hesitating which dish to take. And for a minute, and I don't mean I thought this seriously, but for a briefest moment, I thought, which one of these is going to look better on my Instagram?
Neither, unless they're vegan. There's not enough steak on Instagram. It's all vegan food.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not really...
It is. It is in my feed anyway. I mean, I like a bit of vegan food, but...
Oh, no,
I do like steak.
Cheese in it. Mine's got cheese on it whenever I can. So,
Oh, awesome.
yeah.
So, where is the best place then, other than Instagram,
Yes.
for the listeners to come and find you?
It's a website at midwinteryarns.com. That's got all our online shop on it. It's got a link to a blog as well. A blog that Mark is chasing me to update a little bit more often, so we are working on that. Best place to actually just keep up with news is on Facebook. We're Midwinter Yarns on Facebook, because that's where, I put up shows that we're doing. I put up whenever we get stock back in and things like that. That's, if it's pure, because I don't really believe in sending out newsletters to people, because they usually tend to catch people at the wrong time and they just end up in the bin. So if you want to find out what's going on at Midwinter Yarns, that's the best place to follow.
Oh, super. So do you have any parting words then for those people who are maybe thinking about getting into the industry?
I think it's an amazing industry to be in. It's I still pinch myself very often thinking that, this is what I do for a living, and that some of it is sitting in the garden and knitting, and that's really lovely. You just got to be aware it is a business. You do need to do some work. It can mean, because you haven't, you're making your own hours, it does mean your hours can get really long, because you suddenly feel like, oh, I just want to do one more thing because I think it's going to work. You find yourself at 2:00 in the morning doing stuff because there's nobody to tell you to go home. The knit, as much as I love knitting, sometimes you can end up putting pressure on yourself because you just want to finish that one display sample, and it's taken you longer than you thought, and you end up kind of sitting with 2 bags of peas in your hands because you've actually overworked it. So it is, suddenly there is a certain element of the knitting maybe not always being the one thing you really want to be doing. But at the same time, we'll go to a show. The shows are incredibly intense. They're wonderful, but they are very intense and they are very taxing. And because it's partly the kind of run up to it. As you go all the preparations, then you've got the physical side of getting up there and unpacking and essentially building a shop in the space of a couple of hours. Talking to lots of wonderful but many people over the space of a weekend, and then getting yourself back home. But at the same time, all that work, I still find myself coming back home and going, I want to cast on this thing because I had an idea. So it just doesn't go away. The love of it just does not go away. So, yeah. Just be aware there's work there, but it is, if you are a knitter and you're passionate about woolly things and yarny things, then it's wonderful.
Super. So, let's get excited now. What can we look forward to? What is next for Midwinter Yarns?
Woolfest at the end of June up in Cockermouth in Cumbria is going to be our next big show. And that is a lovely one because that one is a very woolly show. So it's got sheep there on site, and I do believe they had a ceilidh band last year as well, which was very exciting. Yeah, just bringing more wool to more people. Essentially, that's what we're working on. And then, other than that, just trying to come up with more ideas for things to do with our yarns and show them off, essentially.
Wonderful. Lovely. Well, Estelle, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us and all of your experience of running your business.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, I did tell you she was lovely, didn't I? I hope you enjoyed that interview with Estelle and hearing a little bit more about the background to Midwinter Yarns. Head on over, if you're not going to be at Woolfest, and check out all of their wares on their website at midwinteryarns.com, and get yourself in there. Get in there and get some of this lovely sheepy wool tried. So that is all I've got time for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I will be back again next week, but until then, I hope you will have a lovely week. Happy crafting, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye. You've been listening to the Shinybees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can do so via the blog, or I'm Shinybees on Ravelry, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest and Facebook. You can email me at shinybeesinfo@gmail.com. Music for this episode is provided by Music Alley, and it is Adam and the Water Boys and I Need a Drink.
I need a drink.